United States of Cricketdom. Except for a few 100,000 people in New York. Now, this is where we're starting to have to go to. Empire State Rebellion. Boy, isn't that a neat reflection of the empire state of the world, led by the United States government. But people standing up in New York. Hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers refused to register so-called assault weapons ahead of the April 15th deadline, which I found very interesting, tied date to the fiscal obligation of taxation, which seems to be everything tied through into this. But people are now refusing to register. Registry and registration is confiscation. So those of you up in New York, kudos to you. For those of you resisting, though, not registering, that may not be enough. You will be still considered crickets behind a woodshed. It's not just not doing. It's withdrawing, not participating, not consenting, then thinking about what you've been under, the attack that you're under, and then moving against it. Figuring out how to organize up against it. Don't just lash out. Sit back. Rethink what you're doing. Rethink what you've had to do, why you've had to do it. Look at the terrain you're going to be going into, and then readdress this. So that's step one, is to not consent. Step two is actively against it. If we, again, it's not consenting. The rule is throw out the occupier. Throw off the oppression, or you agree to it. So this is a two-step process. You always set your record in the beginning if you can. If not, then you have to take your action pretty quickly, but you have to move with knowledge. Again, knowledge is not power, folks. I keep telling you about this. And this is not because I made this up. You'll learn about this as you start doing things. Oh, wow, the knowledge didn't do anything on its own. It required that I understand the knowledge, understand where it was going to apply, and then apply it correctly. And be real mobile about how you do that, because this enemy, and it's multifaceted enemy, and there's all kinds of ways they come at us. These people, there's all kinds of people that somehow don't like leave people alone. I don't know what that is. I really don't know what that is. It really confounds me a lot. Why we can't just leave each other alone. But we don't. And that means we've got trespassers everywhere, actually. Actually, I say it's a target-rich environment, and that's where we get the wisdom of, well, pick your battles. Well, this is a big one. Due to the tyrannical actions of Andrew Cuomo, and his allies in the state legislature, New York residents are required. New York residents, folks. See, if you just listen to even the stories, even if these people don't know what they're talking about who report on all this, they're telling you the status. When they come to you, or come at you, because you become vocal about this, and you become vocal local, if I can repeat William Roberts' broadcast and his point, and my point, and anybody who looks at this point, that you have to become local where you is. Yeah, I meant that. Is, where you is. You now see, like New York residents, are you a resident? Do you even know what that is? You better find out. Don't take anybody's word for it, not even behind the woodshed. Now, if you're not a resident, or they can't show you that you are, and you know how to present yourself, that they can't attach to you the construction of a residency, maybe that rule and law doesn't apply. The New York residents are required to register an estimated 1 million firearms designated as assault weapons underneath the New York SAFE Act by April 15th, Tax Fool's Day. Firearms, folks. In other words, did that pass you? I wish I could have everyone right in front of me, as if he was right behind a woodshed, and we go through these terminologies. They tell us what this is all about. If we just knew to challenge every bit of it. Firearms, folks. Go to the federal law. Why? Because that's where the definition is that applies to all states that are involved in the interstate compacting for commerce in firearms. What is a firearm? Do you even know? and as I say the word, it flashed in my mind, and I don't do this very well, and I apologize to anybody that I don't really refer to. Ideas just keep flying at me while I'm on the broadcast, and even contrary to my tabs. I'm already off the tabs. I'm just reading this little thing. A new thing pops up. I want to thank Grimner again on Freakers Ball or Balls to the Wall on Friday, and allowing Solomon to call in and from Brazilistan, explaining to us this last Friday that all of Brazil is just it's taken down by the United States. It's just an oppressive condition the United States put on. But in talking about certain things, you listen very carefully to what he's exposing as well. That, well, it ends up being you have to have an awareness beyond what you're told. That if we don't start to bring to bear these issues, these things, and wrap them up in a very narrow place, we're not going to be able to overcome the momentum built up outside of our own selves, which is why it's so important to stand up on your own. The firearms, folks, is not what you think it is. It's a very definite thing, and it's a very limited thing. And if you can challenge the New York statute about residency, and you can challenge that you even have a firearm, no matter what it looks like, then you might have a better chance to start with. That's your first stage. Then you come back and say, even if you're talking to me about this being a subject thing, where is your right? Where was your? You take the initiative. Talk about initiative and referendum. You take the initiative to say, okay, that this is not within your purview. You had no jurisdiction to decide whether or not there was a constraint on my use of this arm against the very thing that the government is trying to do, which is to register for confiscation. That getting back to Solomon and what he was talking about, understand, and this is I forgot all about this. I looked at this a long time ago, and because it's not relevant to most discussions that you might have, and certainly not what most of the time you'll be dealing with, and to tell you the truth, the Second Amendment really is not normally a discussion, and it really ought not to be. But Solomon brought a very important point, that the use of arms, and I know this from years and years ago when I made armor, when I participated with the Society for Creative Anachronism, the SCA, recreating the Middle Ages. One of the first things you do is you establish and create a heraldry. It's made up, but you research history and you find your place there, made up as an anachronism into the time of today, and you create from the history you make up out of your make-believe character a coat of arms. That's called heraldry. It's a principal central point to the whole process of the SCA replication and anachronism of the past today. That the coat of arms is military. He was absolutely correct. I was appreciative of his reminding me of this point, that he points out that the coat of arms is your arms. And I remember a long time ago looking at the Second Amendment, thinking, with other studies that you can do to find out the lineage, they say that the United States separated from England, and there's a lot of proof that says that didn't happen. That was another dupe on us that we might have accepted. That start to interpret the Second Amendment. You have the right to bear arms. But it was really an interesting view when you understand it's really your coat of arms. It's your family and your allegiance. Which, as I've told you before, if you look at Article 6 of the Constitution, it was not a document of freedom. Far from it, actually. Everyone wants to complain about the 1913 Fed, and then we go into 1933 and an imposition of a so-called bankruptcy, and they don't realize that the whole thing, this whole state, this whole nation, or at least the District of Columbia, as was constructed by the states, if we can call them countries in union and federation, they created a debtor. That nation never started anything out but a debtor, and then it went into militarism. So apparently spread its religion everywhere. And a coat of arms is particularly poignant. When you start looking at it, the whole system is really a servitude to some other power. That powers, there's two of them at least that I can come so quickly to mind, and then it depends on how you interpret a couple of documents to see whether or not there's a superior one, was pretty much in line with what Solomon was explaining on Friday. For those of you that want to tune in to the Freaker's Ball, or Balls to the Wall on Friday evening. I think it starts at 8 o'clock on reallibertymedia.com. So, point is that we want to take, and I see this again today. Someone sent me a quick little comment through WT, I think it was Cowboy Tech, talking about the UCC and the discussion, and somebody called Howard Freeman who came up with all the information, and they keep saying that the UCC started up in 1933, but it didn't, folks. See, so I don't even, once I get the wrong premise started, I don't even really go down that track. It's incorrect. That lots of times people say things without you proving it. You have to prove every bit of everything. And you got to continue working the logic out. That when you go from the category that I tell you to keep categories of possibility and potential in your mind, because at some level we really can't tell. We can just tell, like the Libra Code says, what's being, the deed, indeed what's going on. What is. What's going on? What's the action taken? The best you can do is guess as to underlying authority that the one who's taking action to oppress you is using. So the easiest way to understand it, you're just in an occupied territory. That kind of answers a lot of it. You can be occupied by a lot of reasons. Why I say what I do to try and not have to go through these categories. But one of the categories that you have in your mind is that there's this possibility and potential, and you can read it right in the statutes. It's provable. Whether or not you want to believe it is a whole different thing. Whether you want to act from it is a whole other thing. And as I work through it, I go ahead and give it credibility. I find the common thread between that jurisdiction, and other jurisdictions. And there's a common thread you'll find if you research enough that goes through all jurisdictions. And when you find that, that's the narrow path, folks. And you find that as the way I interpret it, and the way I understand it, and the way I use it. You find that narrow path between all jurisdictions, and you can translate between any jurisdiction that's brought before you in these times when a so-called judge or an authority can be one wearing what they call many hats. That's all they're talking about. They're talking about jurisdictions there, and they can pop around, they can jump around, and if you know the terminology that they're using at any one moment, you can keep track of that, and it kind of fries them. When you know how to do that, it really fries them. Because when they jump to the new jurisdiction, you start using that vocabulary. Now, I'm bringing up a whole new aspect that I'm not going to be able to do behind the woodshed here. But the point is that you keep your mind on certain things that we may not know so much. And the right to bear arms is really right to bear the coat of arms, meaning we've always been in a militaristic condition. So I want to thank Solomon for bringing that and reminding me about that. I don't want to go through the analysis on there's a couple of analyses you make on that. It's just an interesting way to look at what's out there and what potentially is out there. Whether or not you want to believe it, whether or not you want to act on it, well, that's up to everybody to do. I just keep them as thoughts, things I know I can prove, that if the vocabulary changes to that premise, or that condition, the potential of it, I'll move there. I don't argue about how it ought not be like that. No, we just go ahead and go there. Because the one who's doing that is driving the conversation, if you will. They're in a seat of decision. They're in a seat of control. They've got an organization better than you and bigger than you. And so, it's going to take all these so-called residents home having firearms. I don't think those people have a right, snowball's hell and chance in hell to win. But if you make yourself a man or a woman that doesn't have a firearm but has as I kind of retermed my own, I have a self-protection appliance. It may sound funny, but if you don't use their words, it's very important because they use their words. And if you don't use those words, as I've proven over and over, and one of the little stories I told you about what happened to us on the river when we were mining, the government wanted to make our machine describe it in their way, and if I had allowed them to describe my machine in their way, they would have taken those facts and constructed an illegal machine and an illegal activity, and so I had to thwart that attempt by knowing how to do so. And so terminology in this is very interesting, and it's very powerful, and it can't be used in a frivolous sense either, but it is the decision that you need to make to know, because when you start applying it, you start finding out there's a limit. And I keep talking to you about that's the limit of the jurisdiction and the authority against you. So a lot more said than I was thinking of, but New York residents are going to be required to have have registered firearms. If you know that you're not a resident, and most men and women are not, I mean, all men and women are not, if you know that status, and not to make other problems construct a relationship with you and the state, and you find out you don't have a firearm under federal law, you now don't have a firearm that can be an assault weapon, and you've just described a condition that you don't have to register. And then you can then take that knowledge, as I say, to put it in action. Not that you have it, because they won't believe it. You have to make a record of how the limit that they're intending to extend, and you make those distinctions, and you get that on written record. The reason why you do that is because you want to be in contact with these felons and these constitutional violators and these seditious, treasonous type military types, oppressors and occupiers. You want to make a record of retribution and retaliation against you. This is another reason why you start writing letters, because they're going to be after you at some point if they know about your self-protection appliance. They'll be after you because they want to make that point. You make a record before they get there. And when they come and attack you, it's retribution or retaliation. Now, well, what else is it, folks? I've told you before, we came onto this here just a little bit ago. Now, like I said, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to bring, what concepts to bring, because most of the stuff I talk about is really foreign to people. Shame on us in one regard, but no judgment. They just taught us wrong, folks. They taught us things that weren't that important if we were intending to be vigilant to protect ourselves in the establishments of the governments that we thought were there to protect us. That you have to work to be more understanding of the condition against you and not be bashful to admit to it and then respond to it. If you can't respond to it, it will overtake you, because that's the dog-eat-dog world we actually live in. That you have to step up, and you're going to have to make your record so that you have a focal point for a lot of people to start working more properly against the oppressor, to throw it out. If we don't, the record authority, the seat of decision, works against us. So what are they doing? When they take a group of people, I said this before, I just broached the idea. I didn't know, I can only broach the ideas as I think that they're relevant. When you take when by law, supposed law, by statute, by edict, whatever you want to call these lawless adjunct policies that throw onto that, when you, in despite of a law that says that shall not be infringed, they still attempt to do certain infringements, and the seat of decision in the Bar Association says so. When they group up a people to make unlawful something that's otherwise not unlawful, what have they just committed that's supposed to be contrary to the Constitution in a very formidable way? And I'm talking about now the federal Constitution. What is that? When they group up, that's a definition, folks. When they take a group of people and make what they were doing that was lawful unlawful, what is that? There's a term for it. It's in the Constitution. So you get something substantial in you. You just don't talk about your opinion, about your right to bear arms. Because if we have the right to bear our coat of arms, all you get the right to do is to bear your allegiance, and that you're bearing your witness that you're going to be fighting for whomever is the biggest and baddest that can come and control you. Otherwise, you got to take it out of that realm, and you got to go, as I say, go to an antecedent right. But your rights don't come by that Second Amendment. They came before that government. And they resided in you as a right, private right to you, as a property right to you. But what is that term in the Constitution when they take a group of people and outlaw what they were doing? It's called a bill of attainder. A bill of attainder. You can't do that, at least by, if you want to say that you're even an occupier. See, this is the thing about it, folks. This goes way back. The occupying force can't break that, because that's in the Constitution. Under international law, they can be an occupying force, but they can't break that unless they can break it, take it out of the Constitution over time, and that hasn't happened. So they cannot, even an occupier who's foreign to the establishment, cannot, under international provisions, take out the bill of attainder. And so that's what that is. You'll still, if you start looking around, you'll see a lot of the newest legislation is illegalizing everybody's activities where they otherwise are legal to do so. In other words, there's no actual crime going on. That's considered and you identify a certain type of people. That's a classification. That's a class now. That's supposed to be illegal too, but it's called a bill of attainder. So I'm telling you these things if you haven't thought about it. I've had to think about it, and that's why I'm telling you this is what we use. And this is what's starting to back these people off. And you'll find out a bill of attainder is an interesting thing. The attorneys, the Bar Association, for the most part, and everywhere we've gone, they've never been told about this. Their knowledge of Constitution was some narrow place that they talked underneath their contract law, that under contract law you can't interfere with the obligation of contract. That was probably the extent of their training about the Constitution with regard to anything, because most of what they talk about now is in contract provisions, which is partly why it's easy to go look for you follow the money that's under some form of contract, express or implied, and that's how they're dealt with. Even reduced to its most basic sense, property law is the contract of conveyance, the document of which we call the patent. And so that establishes the law of the land over which it determined the segregation from the rest. So we have these factual positions that we take, and that could be under contract law in any jurisdiction. The contract exists in different jurisdictions, and you see evidence of that and we're talking states now. Each state has a jurisdiction where you have a contract written in a state, and that contract has to be written to say that it was the parties will agree to go to a court in this state, this certain state. And so that's qualifying which jurisdiction is relevant to that contract, and the laws by which will be determined that contract. So here you say, well, there's no contract between you and the federal government, and my right is antecedent as a man or a woman to protect myself against the government. The government registration is confiscation, and that's a setup to take me down. There's no authority in the government to do so. I am not a resident, and I don't have a firearm. I have this government control device here, and you don't have a right to condition it. Neither the bullets and all this other stuff, because that's the right that goes with it. That's the ability to do so. So if you have a better word in your mouth, you have a better chance to go against this, not just say I'm not going to register and sit yourself in the status that you would otherwise be obligated. You want to throw the obligation off as well. So a lot more of what I was going to tell you before, but important stuff. I only went to the first paragraph. I could go more and more. It's not really relevant. If you don't understand what I've already said at this point and you aren't going to take the next action, I'm wasting everybody's time, even my own, and even to continue the broadcast, because hopefully you're taking notes, or you go back later and listen to the podcast or the blogcaster, more importantly, where you'll see you can read the story yourself. And you can take your notes then and consider these things, and then go work with people that are working with this. Go to New York if you have friends there. This is how this is going to work. We have to step up. The antecedent power remains in the people. The people stand up and by their own initiative, whether or not you have right of initiative formally, you have the initiative of mass. The masses have to overthrow the tyranny. And so this is, I'm trying to give you some information on how that all would work out. You don't want to walk in as a resident with a firearm and say you don't have to be registered, because that's going to get you in a lot of trouble. So you got to set the record that you're not, and I would do it in the reverse, like I've told you before. One of the aspects is to send your letter to the Secretary of State, ask for the capital. You take the name that they have on your driver's license. Most of you all have a driver's license. That proves you're a resident, doesn't it? Because you said so. See, so there, and the utilities are sent to a resident, aren't they? And I told you those are aliens doing business in that state, and that state's a foreign state, and it's foreign even to the people. And so you got a whole lot to work through here to find out about, but you at least go to the existing corporate occupier and you say, does this name that they have in all capital letters, exist in your state as a resident doing business? And they'll send, the Secretary of State will most likely send back a letter saying, no, it's not on our record base. There's your evidence that you're not a resident, right from their own letterhead. So that's the first step. So you got to set your record up that you're not. See, they're going to presume upon you all these things. So you have to have the evidence to rebut that presumption. These are all pretty standard, cut, straightforward things to do. I don't know why it confuses people about how to get this done. And so you have your first proof that, notwithstanding your driver's license or any utility bill, that name is not even in the state. Even if they use it, it's not in the state. So you're not a resident. Then you go to the federal law. I don't have it with me right now. I was just going to tell you about this and move. But firearms are defined in federal law. That's what we're talking about here. And you'll see that in a little bit later if I get to the story about even the NRA and their thing, what they got going. Well, maybe I don't have that story. They have to. You can't even buy a gun at an NRA convention for people because you have to go through the federal firearms licensee. Well, there's commerce again, folks. So you're getting your firearms. You're admitting they're firearms by getting them through a federal licensee. So that's a problem. You got to undo that. See how they have us? They have us doing things that cause us to go and admit into jurisdictions and using their words that aren't the truth. But we didn't know that. That you can't even buy a gun there. You have to go through the federal. So the federal firearm definition is what you're got to go find out about, because that's what the whole of the firearm commerce in this country is over. They've reduced your whole activity for self-defense or Second Amendment, so-called. It's not even registered as that in the government. They've reduced it down to some regulable activity. We didn't recognize that. So you find out that it's not a firearm you have by the law. You say, oh, that's been misapplied to my form. I revoked that. I rescind the signature on that paper because I mistakenly identified a firearm that's not. Now you got that record that you have in your possession, and now you're sitting a lot better to go back and say, okay, now I'm not a resident. I'm within the borders of what you're going to do your police action enforcement, and I don't have a firearm. Why are you going to retaliate against me? And I would think that through very carefully. So you can't just not register. That still sets a presumption that you're obligated, because the presumption of your servitude, your slavery, is the tax home of the fee of the slave is what this is. And if you don't rebut that presumption, you're going to be toast. Land of the fee, the tax home of the slave, folks. So you just have to agree to that. And if you don't, you're toast. It's pretty simple. And you got to take steps to start cutting those ties and being able to make the distinction. Now, and before I get too far deep into the rest, I almost forgot. I made a comment last week that I found was not correct right after I got off the broadcast, and I reposted that on my Blogcaster. I don't even think the ink was dry on the Blogcaster when I went over and found an email that was talking about something contrary to what I suggested for women to do when you get pulled over by a cop in the dark and it's unknown and you want to get to a place where it's more people and brighter. I said do that instead. I have to give a cautionary correction to that. Because right after I got off like I said, right after broadcast and right after I got the Blogcaster put up, went over to my email, and there was a story sitting in there that's woman doesn't pull over for the cop on dark abandoned street, then the unthinkable happened. Cautionary correction to y'all folks, all you women, anybody, even the men. I mean, you got to, somehow we're going to have to figure this around. I have a few ideas, but this story says don't do that. Now you're stuck in between a rock and a hard spot. How do you get to a place that you feel more safe? If you're going to be considered to be a felon, when you don't stop immediately for this revenue, this abuser, the armed felon, and this becomes a much more difficult problem now. So be careful. This was in Indiana, I think. Be careful about not stopping. And I would say this is a problem. I would use this to say, remember we talked about going after the police policies. The police policies. That's almost a redundant statement, isn't it? It's policy. It's police. It's all, again, and we know that they're all military. So this is the occupying force looking like police. And I told you it's coming to a day you can't go, you can't stop, you can't look left, you can't look right, and every time you try to do it, you're going to be doing opposite what their commands are, because they've been trained to do this, and they say these things so quickly, and it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to be not in compliance, and then they're going to give themselves justification to hurt you. These stories were probably going through the mind of Del Ria Good when 52-year-old woman saw flashing lights in her rearview mirror while driving on a deserted road after 11 p.m. in a rural Porter County, Indiana. Is it Indiana? I think it is. So those of you there, a really serious problem here, and I think this is going to go across the country. You need to step up and stop this. She didn't want to stop, but she certainly wasn't trying to evade. She wasn't trying to invade the situation, and the case was being signaled by a legitimate police officer in case she was. So she didn't know. This is what I was telling you. You get in that condition, how do you know? People impersonate officers. You don't want to be stuck in a place where no one's seeing. And if it's a real officer, you don't want to be stuck in a place where there's not a camera around you. So you want to get to a place where there's people anymore. Good slowed down, turned on her blinkers, and waved her hand out the window to show the person behind her that she was aware of his presence and would eventually pull over when she got to a safer and busier area. But the police officer behind her had different ideas. Once Good did pull over, Patrolman William Marshall of the Porter County Sheriff's Department arrested her for resisting arrest, a felony. Now, won't read more. The point is that up until last week, that was not supposed to happen because this is not a felony condition of the stop. This is getting you to say if you have a reason. Your intention was not to evade. But now they're going to get you into a felony condition where you now have to prove your intention was not to evade. And this is, the C decision. The Bar Association creates these things to allow the situation, the social control that they need, and give the police the more power. That you need to go into your sheriff's office now and your city police, and you need to bring this story, and you get this in the blogcaster, or if those of you that are really quick, you typed in the title I read off and you've already got the story, that you pull this down and you go take it into your police precincts, and you say, I want to know what your policy is over this. Because if this is going to happen here, that policy is going to change. And then you say, and then you have to put yourself on the line. I'm willing to sue you to get it changed. Because this is unjust. And so this is a object lesson. I have to make the correction to you because I told you to go find I told you last week, go find the well-lit space that has more people around it if you can. Don't get pulled over in the dark alley. We still had that. I was speaking mainly to women here, because all the men are so macho. They think they can take it better in the dark, I guess. But this is not the case. In one state now, that's been presumed now not to be. It's presumed now to be evading. It's a felony. So, cautionary correction. You need to get that fixed. You need to start bringing more reason even to the occupier's policies. That's not reasonable and it's unsafe. And you read the article, there's more discussion about why it's unsafe and what predicament that puts people in. This is the day, folks, when I would have never guessed that this was the day we were coming as I grew up. That you can't stop and you can't go. That's not freedom. That's not reason. That's not law. That's just an excuse to beat you down and get you tied into the system even more. Okay, let's go there, folks. Let's say that they get you and they charge you for evading, and they get, because they got a stupid jury. You know the juries are stupid. It's just like you and me. We're all stupid. We don't even know how to think. We don't even know how to think anymore. We use our beliefs more than we believe. We look at the law and we look at what's supposed to happen. We don't even know what that is. They never told us. Very few of us know that. Very few of us can look at this. And then they give kudos to the judges that they can look at it. But what do you know? You're just, okay, they're just experts. You got more experts that could be surprised one day. And we see that a lot. So you get before that, and now you're sitting on a felony. That's a serious deal. That's a real serious deal. You know, that's just to take your supposed right to bear arms, isn't it? That's just to limit your voice, isn't it? You don't get a vote. A lot of states don't give you any more rights. That's why they're doing it. And you're sitting on a felony, and you don't understand how to prove that you weren't evading. That's a presumption of guilt, just for not immediately slamming on the brakes and letting them beat you up in the dark. Do you understand the irony that you were doing that in the beginning because you thought it was not a cop that would beat you up, steal your stuff? That is unjust. There's nothing in that they've been able to set up, your tail light being out or anything, that they then escalate the charge because you didn't comply without notice. It's another due process problem. That you need to think about how this is working, and you need to step up to stop it. I can't be in Indiana to stop this. Those of you there have to, and I'm telling you, this has been escalating across the country. It's the only time now everywhere it's going to be like this. And there may be places with policies that do, and states with laws that do allow you to find that place that I thought was continuing. But they're pushing the envelope of what is questionable. They put everything into the question. They make an issue, and then the courts get to decide. The judges get to decide. The social engineers get to decide. That everyone thinks is doing the law, and they're not. So we're in that day, folks. You really can't remain silent. This could be you one day. It actually kind of sent a chill down my bones when I saw they would infer. Like, I asked a cop one time on the stand, a long, long time ago, when I was fighting tickets and things. I asked, well, it was actually I was charged with impeding traffic. And if you go read the impeding statute, it's a crime. I mean, they make a crime by the intention to want to impede traffic. So I asked the officer whether or not he could read my mind. That he knew from another car that my intention was to impede traffic. And as soon as I asked that question, the judge jumped in to interfere with my question and disallowed the question. The problem is there, you have to understand that's what you're up against. And when you're not, see, I didn't know that at that time that they wouldn't allow that question. I thought it was a pretty fair question. But my point was, if they can't read my mind, what other evidence do you have of my intention? And I was trying to reset the burden, but they won't let you. And so I had to go after it a different way, I guess is the point on that. You have to be real mobile. I tell you have to give an answer. You have to come up with answers that they come out of nowhere to you if you've been reading enough, and you'll have these answers. But they won't let you challenge whether or not the cop can know. To be able to have probable cause to believe your intention, which is the crime. Knowing intention is crime when you harm something. So that doesn't make it to the record. Well, it makes it to the record if you want to preserve the obstruction. But the point is that it won't allow that question. So if they can't tell initially, they've given another presumption over to the state. And this is a serious one because it's felony. It's not just a misdemeanor where you might be able to squeak out. This is a felony. The intention of evasion, despite all the other facts. And this is where you start to find out that the presumption is you're guilty. And I don't mean in words, I mean in function. You can all say, oh, we're guilty until proven innocent. Well, you did that when you didn't avoid the jurisdiction by the proper paperwork to cause the question whether or not they had it. In other words, that he pulled them over to try and go after this and make a felony, that has you can make an avoidance of that jurisdiction for the fraud that charge is. And you put it on the onus back on the state in order to prove how they could come to the probable cause conclusion that it was evasion, given the evidence. But see, now you're in it, and you got to know about it. So, these are the things that are in the news. I was incorrect to tell you to keep going to a safer spot. The government doesn't want you, in Indiana at least, doesn't want you in the safer spot. And this is why, again, gets us back. So you have to have anymore. You have to have your cameras. You have to have your recorders. You have to go down even after, and you have to go discuss with your law enforcement, so-called, your revenue enhancement forces. You have to go discuss this with them and get it on the table what's going to happen. You can't rely on reason. You can't rely on the law. There's no reliance on anything. It's going to be on even yourself. You think you're prepared. You're not, folks. I'm just telling you you're not. For as prepared as I thought I was, when you're stripped of everything that you get to do, you're helpless and hopeless. When they take all your tools away that you could defend yourself, like the NDAA did, it's pretty much a hopeless type condition. And within that, I even look for even the opportunities inside that. There's still things you might be able to do in that, but it's going to be so difficult that if you don't have this ahead of time, they're telling us, folks, they're taking away the right to be safe when you travel. And I can just tell you, they've already all done it when you get that when that tag plate, that license plate goes on that car, that brought you into the subjection to this. And until we get onto the other side on the use of the road law that says they can't regulate the use of the road, until we understand to go there, we're going to have serious complications about how this is being brought down on us. And I've been behind the woodshed for all these years trying to get people to just hear this, see this, and start acting in the more proper way. Despite the oppression that allows a pregnant woman to be beaten An officer investigated after video shows him beating a 9-month pregnant woman. New details are emerging about the horrifying video we reported on Monday showing a 38-week pregnant woman being viciously assaulted by a Hunt County Sheriff deputy. Since the video of the March 4th incident has gone viral, the woman has been identified as Deanna Robinson, a 38-year-old decorated Air Force veteran who once received an Airman's Medal, the highest honor in the Air Force, after she helped drag soldiers from a burning plane in Iraq. On March 1st, Robinson reportedly got into a shoving match with her husband, and she was holding her 18-month-old son, Landry. Upset over the incident, she took her young child and went to stay at her parents' house. The following day, one of their 3 stepchildren, 9-year-old, who was bound to a wheelchair due to cerebral palsy, told his teacher about the incident. The teacher proceeded to call Child Protective Services. And you see, if you have heard Behind the Woodshed all this time, you see that third paragraph, the slide into the stinking abyss happens, and she's out of control. I was really also sad to hear cerebral palsy. I wonder how much of that was caused by her being in Iraq and being around chemicals and depleted uranium weaponry. Notwithstanding all that, notwithstanding her ability to save people in a horrendous condition, these officers beat her down. And I've told you about Child Protective Services. I can't tell you how bad that is. This rights of child out of the UN is a soft-law imposition that came sneaking in, and the family court system is all the same abomination. Not that Obama did anything with it, but long before him. This is a horrendous condition that allows for a so-called justification of someone to beat up another. They busted in her house and such. I'm not going to read through it all, but I've told you that this is the day when you have to either you see the wrong and right it, or it will be with you. You will be living that life. The war of terror. I just can't tell you enough how that is. It's everywhere that this is what's happening, and I hear crickets. I just don't understand it. I mean, I really don't understand it. I'm hearing lots more people seeing it. They're actually talking about it. I kind of seen some emails come through. It's funny how long I've been saying what I've been saying, and now people are saying, oh, we're in a war. Oh, we got to do something. How come we're so silent? Everyone's seeing, the crickets I've been playing now since at least the NDA, and kind of knew it before, but that departure from any law at all, if you thought there was and the silence is just too much for me. That I enter now the broadcast with crickets. And I can, as I explained, the New Yorkers are all riled up. And they're not going to register their guns, and rightfully so, but they're not going to take the next step. So essentially they're crickets. It's a 2-step process. One is don't consent. The next is act against what came against you. I don't see that second action. No different, I guess. I just flashed in my mind the SCI talked about. This is Society of Creative Anachronism. You get into armor, you recreate the Middle Ages, recreate battles. It's a fictional thing, and brought for the past brought to the future. I was an armor maker. It's kind of it's safety. It's safety devices for fighters is armor. That's really what you find out what it ends up being. I took a style that was called Florentine, just two sticks, no shields. And it's a pretty vulnerable position, but it's very, very, for me, for my capacity, it was very, very formidable. I didn't need a shield. In fact, one of my sticks was a shield. It was a 2-inch shield. And you'd be hard-pressed to get me with that 2-inch shield in front of me. And that I could kill you with, metaphorically, or whatever. You take these capabilities and you go out in the field and you defend yourself. And reproducing the time that we have that's been taken from us. And we said nothing. They put it in writing and they shoved it in a store, in a wall, in a hole somewhere, some vault, some archive. Archive means to die. I mean, it's where they put things that have died in archive. And we're supposed to stand up, and we're supposed to do something with all of our techniques and knowledge and taken away from us. And then we're quiet about it. That this Second Amendment isn't, as I tell you, it's not that I want to resort to it. In fact, I think that's the last thing we have to do. That if we're not responding without having to do that, how worthy are we of what we aspired to, actually? And that's a sad thought for me to even think about, because I assume now, because of the crickets, that we are literally agreeing that the stinking abyss is a better place to go. Despite everyone now starting to see the things I've been talking about for many, many years, and really how to respond to them. I'm just not talking about that they exist. I'm saying here they are. Here's the notice. Are you going to step up? Are you going to take that part to stop it? There's a breach in the wall. Are you going to step up? Are you going to take your weapon style and step up and stop the invader? All I think I can do now is to ask. Because the powers don't care. They're beating down women that are pregnant now under any justification, let alone just shooting people. We see it all the time now. As I reported last week, we have more people dead this year from cops than the UK did from 1900. It's a sad commentary. If anybody out there, even behind the woodshed, believes at all and really aspires to a better way of life, that free life we thought we had, where everything is peaches and cream, peace and tranquility. I'm stunned. I'm speechless against the truth of it, that we still yak about ourselves and acknowledge these things and don't step out to protect ourselves. It's I don't have the words. I just don't have the words. And the powers that be will make it happen whatever they want. Then no one speaks out, that they beat down on women, they beat down in diplomatic circles. There is no diplomacy. See, this is the whole point. When you started seeing that go away, you should have got a clue. And moving on over to now another woman, now internationally, female Palestinian MP snatched by IDF and held without charge for 6 months. Israeli troops have placed under 6-month administrative detention a female Palestinian MP who was involved in the Palestinian Authority's relationship with the International Criminal Court. Israel has been fiercely opposed to the Palestinians joining the ICC because they're going to bring charges of genocide against the Palestinians for Gaza. And so this is what you see, the international reflection, the mirror of what the state is doing to you in that felony against the woman. They beat down on essentially innocent people. See, you're supposed to, that there's a felony when they get beat down and there was no actual charge there. If you're presumed innocent, there is actually no charge there. It's just a thing you have to answer to. And whether or not it's sufficient, you can get out of that. The government is telling you, no matter what government is involved, they don't care. They'll do what they can do to interfere with you. That this takes a whole other mindset than most people think about. I think that when everyone, not everyone, but lots of people want to support the ally called Israel, and these people are doing international diplomatic crimes. How do you support a country, if I can call it that? The state, it's no different than the is state. It's a state that's been fabricated by other powers, and it's only there because of the support of those other powers, that does not allow due process. That this country allows that to happen. That you need to see that if they're not going to allow this, they're going to deny due process to this woman that's in another country, who's a diplomat trying to work it out, trying to expose crimes. What chance do you have? And then you have to ask yourself, okay, if I don't have a chance, do I step up against it, or do I sit here until it happens to me? Or am I going to be even more cowardly? I'm just going to stick my head in the sand and do nothing, hope I sneak out of this one. I guess that's an option too. And so we have the people in the world that are going to be outed. They aren't even noble anymore enough. They aren't honorable enough to even face a charge to be able to prove their innocence, correct? And we agree to that as a people. The lies that they bring in to get us to believe that everything's hunky-dory is, again, at some point I get pretty speechless. And on people who know me, when we talk on subject matters that I'm pretty I think, informed about, they know being speechless is a pretty interesting problem for me. I mean, they know that's a big deal. When I finally go speechless, and maybe that day may happen, I don't know. How much farther do you go when the crickets are the crickets? When the small army you have that is working behind the scenes, the small guerrilla, the wolves that are in the underwolves in the black sheep for herd are doing what they can, but it's just not enough. When do you stop? Not that I'm really, although it's been thoughts in my mind, it's not that I'm really considering that in any earnest way, because we are making those strides and we are hurting the enemy really significantly. And I know how few it takes to do this, and that's what I guess the real frustration. It doesn't take, I think the crickets could be playing while the solution happens, and that's just a bunch of people that are just underneath not being crickets that really don't make enough noise because they're actually actively working to stop things, or actually stopping things. It doesn't take everybody, but it does take the mass awareness, and that's one of the things that people overlook. The excuse of the war of terrorism. I find it very interesting how narrow the memory is, the memory hole that develops, the chasm, the deep of where all this information goes that no one responds to, and they don't correlate back out. And I don't know that I do it so well either, but at least I see some of it. But when the underpinnings of some of the people that were claimed to have been the terrorists the United States was after starts to be lifted, we never go back and say, well, wait a minute, wasn't that the whole point of why we entered into this 15-year war of terrorism? And continue the even longer, the longest war ever, I think, is the war war on drugs. I mean, why do we continue this nonsense when we find out that the CIA is involved in actually advancing it? Where's the people here to talk about it? That another terrorism state after Iran. Remember, I'm going to get over the Middle East, and they're going after Gaza, a woman from Gaza who wants to bring out that Israel did war crimes. So they just collect her up and put her somewhere. If you don't think that's NDAA for Americans, the United States turning its back on due process, the due process of which they exterminated for Americans in Battlefield America, going extrajudicial in the memo that they explained. I think it's page 64 or 65. You can read it for yourself. That all of a sudden, out of the news, after Iran is now making a deal for the nuclear thing, and that's so fine and great. I'm all agreeable to statesmanship. It's probably a better battle to wage than actual war. That Cuba is expected to be removed from the state sponsors of terrorism list. Now, given this is the case, and we heard the situation around Cuba, the State Department is expected to recommend Cuba be removed from the government's list of state sponsors of terrorism, a notorious designation that has been stumbling block in the establishment of embassies in both Havana and Washington. That when this is removed, now we got Iran removed and Cuba removed, what else should be removed? That we explained a long time ago, these were all just straw men, correct? That I hear crickets about it. Not that they should be removed, but that this state-sponsored list is a fabrication. It's like climate change. It's a fabrication to come to an outcome. That I don't hear much more about it. In a way, I've heard some pretty negative things, but getting people to be interactive with other nations, I think, is important. Other than the political problems that may exist by opening up Cuba, I don't know about all that. But that it's taken this all this time. 911 was irrelevant to Cuba, and now this becomes come off the terror list. It's all a fabrication, and I don't hear anybody criticizing it. and I don't mean just to criticize that they took him off. I'm talking about that they're utilizing this list to continue the oppression in your life, to create the environment, to create terrorism. Blame it on people, get away with it, and then advance the agenda of locking your life down. That I don't know that many people actually put these steps together, that they certainly then don't put them together in a way to effectively address them against those in the position that are causing the tyranny, the sedition, the treason, and and then felonies, the numerous crimes against people, the crime against men and women in the world, and we are silent against it. I just don't quite get it. That in the context here of the war of terrorism, and we're bringing a supposed state sponsor of terrorism off. I don't know if you heard, the Boston bomber is now one step closer to closure in their case. All the people they paraded about all lost their legs. I found it interesting, all the pictures of the people that were supposed victims of the Boston bomber. I never saw below their waist in their before pictures, and I noticed them all after that they all had their prosthesis on to make sure that they do that they parade all these victims out over total issues that were totally apparently they sound fabricated over and over. They followed the Sandy Hook model that we could program them out, but he's one step. This case is a marathon bombing victim. Speak out of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev is found guilty on all 30 counts, folks, but split over whether arrogant and emotionless terrorists should be put to death. Okay, so there's like 3 political statements in this case alone that they've been apparently trying to put out. But I found interesting, a nice commentary from CLG News, legitgov.org, just a statement where got an email through it. In fact, I wasn't even following this, and I wasn't going to talk about it until I saw this little note. Lawyer Judy Clark. Well, lawyer, she has put in quotes. In other words, quote lawyer. And we knew this, and I just reported on this part of the Boston bombing as soon as it came out that weekend that I could come. And I told you this is certainly a dead issue. Why? Because if you remember, and this is what LegitGov stated, lawyer, in quotes, Judy Clark announced her client was guilty on the very first day of trial. Quote, trial. So this thing was a setup from the beginning. It was known. The trial was really a waste of time. Why, it was guilty when they said that, why didn't it just go to the rest? No, this is a parade. This is a show trial. And it did whatever it was going to do. And another thing I noticed that she had put down here at legitgov. Let me see, how's that? Legitgov.org. Yes, so excuse me. She put it a hashtag disbar now, which again tied in with the lawyer. This was not a lawyer. This was just a showman. Came out and declared guilt. Folks, is that representation? Defending against the charge of murder or whatever the heck the conspiracy was, whatever they're charged with? No, my client done it. And then they have a trial? Is that even real? That I found disbar now really poignant as it settles on what I've found out in our court case, that the bar is a criminal. The bar is the social engineer. About every statute and law you know about comes from them through the color of an organizational structure into your life to impose upon you, such that now cops can get you for evading, for having the actual intention to keep yourself safe. That cops can now shoot you, and juries are so stupid as to let someone who shoots another walk, whatever costume they're wearing. None at all. That again, I'd appreciate the question that there was a lawyer involved at all, and questioned that there was a trial, and then called for the disbarment of the I would call the bar, which includes the prosecutor, the defense attorney, so-called, who's the declarer of his guilt, correct? And then the judge. And you understand that's the system they've created too. The courtroom, the system, the whole record system, the clerk. It's all part of that system. We can buy into all this. We can get into the hype of 30 is guilty for 30. Why'd they even take, folks? They again, apparently they took actual time. They deliberated. The jury deliberated over this. I guess if they didn't have them deliberate, you wouldn't have believed the show trial. See, they had no need to deliberate where the guy said, "I've done it," through a representative. And I still, as I think about that, as well as disbar now, the lawyers should be serving the sentence as well. That I think would probably change things. The show trial had a, quote, lawyer and declared him guilty. What was that, folks? I mean, any time is wasted on that. In fact, I may have just wasted a ton of time just talking about this, just to point it out. This is the reality we live in. It's a setup. The government sets it up. They use this war of terror to keep you terrorized, to justify this war of terror, and to justify the system that continues it. And I hear crickets. I hear excuses. I hear, "Oh, well, that's the way it works. I can do nothing about it." And how do you know that unless you tried? And I mean rightly, not the way you think you thought you were going to go after it when you're just reading off the internet. I mean getting involved, roll your sleeves up and find out that your arms are all dirty because you didn't quite understand what's going on and you got messed up a little bit. And you're not going to do that against you. Go back at it because you're persistent. And you learn yourself some things. And you become formidable in challenging that occupier instead of just writing it off that you can't, or that you don't know enough, or there's something in the way. You know, we hear that these things are going on with us, and we don't respond to them. We don't see them as a threat. I'm still a bit astonished, and maybe no one wants to talk to me, and so I don't know that they've done it. I'm still astonished to see people use Skype. I really am just flabbergasted. This is the crickets, folks. You just hear me silent? I'm just sitting here thinking, why would a people continually use stuff that they know and take really no measures, I guess is the point. We still have to communicate, but why do you take no measures to protect yourself? Now, I heard a long time ago that government was tracking our phone calls, and it's just ideas. And it's all, before the word conspiracy theory was a throw out there to vilify you. It was kind of out there. You just kind of thought about it. How could that be? Because the technology of the day, you realize, how can they have that many tape machines running? This is before digital technology. How could they actually do this? Well, apparently they were doing something because the U.S. secretly tracked billions of calls for decades. And I hear these stories come out, and I hear people say, "Well, that because they've been doing it all that, I'm just going to continue to let them record, and I'm not going to take any measures to protect myself." But here's another story, hot on the heels of all the rest, and the Snowden issues, and the guy before him, and all these other people that have been talking and telling us, and we sit by crickets, and we don't take any measures to protect ourselves. The United States government started keeping secret records of Americans' international phone calls nearly a decade before September 11 terrorist attacks, harvesting billions of calls in a program that provided a blueprint for the far broader National Security Agency surveillance that followed. Now, without getting too far afield, if they were tracking these calls prior, and this story does a very interesting job to try and avoid this question, why didn't they know the communications that caused 9/11? And as I should say, that reminds me here, this week we were out of a area router, system router failed, not the house router. The system router failed for a large area in our neighborhood. We were out of connection for the internet for quite a few days. And interestingly, we were also out of phone service, and found out that all of our phone calls are going through that router. not just the digital information, as well as the phone calls, which are not digital, they're analog converted. It kind of gave me a quick insight that that's how they've been, that's how they have been recording us and digitizing all this stuff. It's in the routers that they use for this internet as well. And I understand that another couple phone lines that are not on that system, that are not on digital connection, continued to function when that router went down, to say that maybe those other calls are not necessarily so closely connected. So here we have that before 9/11, the United States government was utilizing the Justice Department, and the Drug Enforcement Administration was utilizing collection of all this information. And they were focusing on international calls. And at that time, I realized, I can remember now, that was really a more proper aspect, but it really wasn't them that was supposed to be doing that. That was where the NSA was actually supposed to be functioning, or the CIA, outside. But now we find out that the CIA is involved. So this is an internal connection. They're just searching out the competition. They're going to kill the competition so the CIA can continue to run underneath this drug trafficking that it does. As the government in the DEA on the war of against drugs goes after the cartels that are coming up around the profiteering that's happening. Anyway, the point here to me was, if they were doing all this before 9/11, why didn't they have enough intelligence, and didn't they have enough intelligence to stop 9/11, if in fact it was done the way they said it was done? So I found that story just to be a little interesting. Not just confirmation of our hunches back then, but we were being told that our calls were being recorded, but here's now the proof after the fact. And I don't know that I hear more than crickets on all this. For those of you also that registered motorcycles, it's now come out. How innocuous, but here it is. That the FBI admits all this stuff happening underneath the skin. You don't think there's a national registry thing going on? And we were talking about, a long time back, we can't let this happen. It's done. It's already been happened. And the registration, the guns, registration is confiscation. Registration is confiscation of your life. It's also the imposition of whatever idea they want to put on you for what that meant. You extremist. FBI admits all registered motorcycle owners are on a classified gang list. If you don't believe what I was telling you before about not wanting to have people, the government, know what I'm doing because they make stuff up. As I kept referencing you, the story that we heard, the household that the mother, the woman wanted to make she wanted to get a new rice cooker. The husband was looking for backpacks for going camping, and the son was enthralled with the marathon bombing, and a couple days later, some police show up knocking on their door wanting to know about the bomb they're planning on building. That this is another confirmation when the government when you register or you get into some connection where they have data, they'll make stuff up, and that should terrify you. It kind of terrifies me. Because when you sit in the world that the presumption's against you and the seated decision's against you, and you haven't figured all that out, and even if you have, that should terrify you. You're living in an open-air prison, and you just ain't got caught for the rule violation that you made yet. MSNBC correspondent Jeremy Lancaster sat down with a government official, Darren Cornea, to discuss recent rumors that have been in circulation in regard to registered motorcycle owners being placed on a classified FBI gang list. I don't even know if I want to read more. This is it, folks. It's just proof they make the stuff up. The question was asked, is it true or false? And the answer was, that would be a true statement. The FBI has been collecting and compiling Department of Motor Vehicles and Driver's License Division records for the purpose of adding those that own motorcycles to a classified gang list in 1994. It's nothing more than collecting and utilizing data. We may not like to admit it, but the truth of the matter is that those that own and operate motorcycles are 67% more likely to be involved in illegal or criminal activity than those that do not own or operate a motorcycle. What's the warrant, folks? Where's the probable cause? But let me go back. Department of Motor Vehicles and Driver's License Division. big, long name, isn't it? Well, you go look in the state that they have one of these in every state, and then go look at their rules and say, what does it pertain to? And you'll see it's commerce. Not the one that you use to go buy a gallon of milk, the one for transporting over the highway. Those of you who want to read that in federal law, go to Title 18, Section 31. I think it's about number 10. Go down there and read that for yourself. This is how they're doing this. This is all underneath the commerce, the color of commerce control. And under commerce, let's go back to 1917, Trading with the Enemy Act. The United States citizen was removed as an exception in 1933. There's your connection to being presumed to be a criminal. That underpins Title 50. That's where your military gets its power, and that is underpinned, as I tell you, go look in the appendix under Title 1295A. That's your financial construct that this whole thing comes around. Commerce and the utilization of this debt stuff that the FBI has been collecting already. It's already got a database that it makes from these state departments, so-called, these are not state departments actually. We're finding out more and more, like the DEQ. The DEQ is expressly established just to implement federal environmental laws. It's not a state agency actually. And when you know that, it starts to turn your whole argument changes when you see it that way. When you finally get that these Department of Motor Vehicles companies with the corporate states are just doing commerce, and it's federal commerce. That the FBI can use those records and deem you to be a gang member. Now, gangs are underneath commerce as well. They're just the competition for the government, aren't they? Yes, that was a joke, but it's not a joke. This is the truth. This is what it is. So, all y'all motorcycle residents who registered, you were put on some gang list. It's like, you walk up, you wonder why you walk up to some TSA guy at the airport and can't get on an airplane or get extra scrutiny. Maybe that's what's going on. So we are beyond questioning whether or not there's national registries for things. You think it stopped at motorcycles? No, that's just the one they're telling you about. And they know we're going to go back to the sheep that we are, but we're going to go back to eating our grass. But there seems to be an answer to all this so-called law enforcement, which is really just make it up. The FBI is notorious now for making stuff up and going to the dumbest guys, people they not guys, it could be a woman too, the dumbest people they find to enter into something that the FBI then fabricates into some terror act. And there's a as I've been telling you, you learn how to get rid of these things, and that seems to be a really good answer. As it's found through history, governments, full-on governments were abolished in certain areas by the people. And they went on happily ever after, well, until the snakes in the grass snuck back into the courthouse, typically the Bar Association. That if you want to start stopping this, you have to start acting to stop it. Again, throw out the occupying force, as one Texas town does and experiences a 61% drop in crime after firing their police department. Think about that, folks. So all the governments also, they tend to say there's a crime spree. It's actually them. And they take credit for stopping it or not stopping it or having to fight it. See, all this is how they use this on us, and we don't understand about that. We're understanding better now, but now I'm trying to get us moved past the fear and past the potential and past the overwhelming part of it and say, okay, well, let's handle this. Step up where you find yourself. And let's stop this nonsense. This town did, apparently. Sharpston town in Texas. A Texas community located southwest of Houston, and the way they maintain security in the community has gotten our attention. In 2012, they fired their cops. The Sharpstown Civic Association had hired SEAL Security Solutions, a private firm, to patrol their streets. And the statist fearmongers will have you believe that privatizing anything would result in mass chaos and Mad Max scenarios of warlords and rampant crime, but they are wrong. Since we've been in there, an independent crime study that they've done indicates that we've reduced the crime 61% in just 20 months. So, I'm not necessarily a fan of privatizing. I think you should take and privatize your own public police. and put them in this same condition. The point is that the police are the crime. And one little civic association was able to curtail their police by removing them and essentially taking on the responsibility themselves. So chalk one up for the people responding to an oppression by so-called government, color of government enforcement. And I also suggested that you move your representatives to either do it or you do an initiative or referendum. Well, I guess referendum would be on some initiated policy that was brought before that was not allowed, or that was allowed that you don't want. But so initiative and lobbying your lawmaker, so-called, to stop the civil forfeiture. Another thing here that's been done, get rid of that. New Mexico governor signs a bill outlawing civil asset forfeiture, aka policing for profit. Now, this wasn't a complete route, so let's not get too wild, but that's a decent start in the right direction to identify a real wrong, a reason to plunder. It still doesn't mean that the policies don't come down from the state side to cause this to become more, but the way they're doing it, that the police do not get the funds. Now, that directly applying to the agency is defined in the Libre Code as martial law. Now, what they've done is that they've now covered that a little bit. They're saying that these forfeiture proceedings, when they comply with this law for the purposes of connecting up the property to a crime, and not just stealing it from some third party by suing the property itself, that the assets will still go to the state. But do not forget, that's still funding the organization that steals the property in the first place. So that's still martial law, even though it's going into a general fund. But this is a good motion in the right direction. It needs to have a whole lot more. And I want to remind you as well, civil asset forfeiture, from everything I've studied, is in admiralty. And so this is they're considering this is like booty, folks. And talk about booty call. This is what this is. This is booty on the land. The pirates are on the land, stealing your stuff. So this is an admiralty, and the Constitution I read that said that there's a government that's established was supposed to say, show us and explain to us that forfeiture in admiralty is exclusively in the federal courts. So state courts are not even supposed to be doing this. For those of you kind of paying attention, for anybody who might be involved in this, maybe jurisdictional argument in the first instance over the wrong court, move to dismiss for being the wrong court, an incompetent jurisdiction to hear a civil forfeiture, which appears in everything I've read so far to be an admiralty condition. If you didn't think that the Navy declaring that the high water mark was the toppest peak for purposes of admiralty jurisdiction, you might want to research about that little gem. I guess the flood meant something to the Navy. Another thing that happened here a few weeks ago, I'm trying to get through all this information. I don't really ever get to much of it with talking and trying to explain certain other things, but always something new, important to come up that kind of drives this stuff in the background. Brady Center loses lawsuit targeting online ammo sellers. And this is interesting, not that it should be amazing. That it had to go to the courts is always amazing to me, because I don't think these courts should not be able to, I don't see how the courts have jurisdiction over settled matters. In other words, the Second Amendment right and the right to the bullets is a settled matter. It's settled by Constitution. It's settled by the prohibition against the government to even address it. And then, as I tell you, put the antecedent condition in, so your rights are not conditioned by a piece of paper agreement underneath the provisions of the judiciary that can interpret it. You take it outside of their authority by saying, no, this is an antecedent right that I have to control the continuation of this establishment under this document. I come before that. My rights relate before you have a chance to say how it's limited. That this use of bullets should have never been an issue, but that it was, and thankfully the tyrants aren't completely successful in overwhelming everyone. That they found that they can't do that. The Brady bill type, center, the Brady guy, Brady was the way the conduit through which they started to push this control. Didn't get their way. In an order released yesterday, the senior U.S. judge, and again, senior U.S. judges are not judges of competency. They're administrative court judges. They're administrative judges. They are not Article 3. They're probably, and we haven't found an Article 3 court anywhere in the United States in our lawsuit, so they're not even in Article 3 courts. This is probably never discussed, and the attorneys certainly won't out it. But so I always find skeptical of the actual legitimacy of these orders. And guess what? We don't need the order anyway to tell you that for me to tell you, and you should understand, your antecedent right takes it away from all these idiots who think that they have a decision, who think that the Brady people can actually make an imposition. This gives the oppressor control in a number of areas. Sandy and Lonnie Phillips are parents. Wow, these words are just killer for me. Are wards of the state, are guardians of the state over their ward, the possession of which resides in the state. They filed one of the victims of the Aurora movie theater shooting, so apparently this is a grievance of the government that they defending themselves from. They couldn't help this as guardians. They couldn't help the victim. The lawsuit was backed by the Anti-Gun Brady Center. According to September 2014 report by ABC 7 News in Denver, the lawsuit accused the 4 online suppliers of ammunition and military-grade equipment of failing to screen the gunman and making it too easy for him to buy ammunition, tear gas, and body armor. We're putting them on notice. We're coming after you, said Lonnie Phillips, as reported was saying. Apparently the law had something else to say about that. The case was dismissed for failure to overcome the industry protection in the Federal Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, 15 U.S.C. 790-01, also known as PLCAA, signed into law by George Bush in 2005. The plaintiff's arguments were also found to collapse under the similar state law that protects firearms community, not the arms, not the right to bear antecedent the government, from frivolous and harassing tort claims. So this is a good indication here that they can't even come in commerce to stop these people, folks. And this is the whole point another thing I wanted to point out. You see, it's tied to the commerce of arms, and that arms will be firearms defined elsewhere. I think it's actually defined in 15 U.S.C. So all this is all integrated if you know how to look at it. And it's all predictable at some level if you look at it through that. But it also is dangerous because it put before an incompetent judge in a court that doesn't actually exist for the purpose an administrative claim for doing commerce over the internet. And despite all that, there was nothing that they could, I guess they couldn't do it antecedent. They couldn't do it by right, but there's a protection of lawful commerce in Arms Act that protected them. So now you have the government itself protecting the right to bear arms, so to speak. But it's all through a commerce section. As I keep telling you, be careful what you admit into when you agree you have a firearm. So I just thought that was an interesting story in conjunction with these others. And another one now, and locally in your state law, it starts to drive what you can do. And it kind of, I don't know why the state has the right to cause a permit. That seems to be, again, registration is confiscation at some point. And permitting, you have to follow the rules that you didn't have to follow if you weren't under the permit. But no permit now, and so one state steps up, and thank you to even see this, that this should be the example for others in other states to actually move on, folks. This is what I'm saying. This is not just the news of these stories I'm telling you. I'm saying that there's examples of what you do about it now. When you find you live in the prison, but you're actually not supposed to be there, you've been placed there constructively, you have to deconstruct it. That's the job, that's the obligation. That's why you can't sit back. No permit for concealed guns in Texas. In Kansas. I was thinking Texas. No permit for concealed guns in Kansas. Toto. I guess they found the man behind the curtain, and they got that little Toto to pull that curtain back. No permit for concealed guns. Shame on Texas is what my thought was as I was reading that. But in Kansas, you don't need a permit. Now, I don't even know why the seats of decision, the Bar Association and the judges before, if there was such a thing, that wasn't in control from the Inns of Court before that, from England itself, even had a say over this, but they have somehow. But Governor Sam Brownback today will sign a bill allowing Kansans to carry to carry concealed weapons without a permit. The Senate Bill 45, approved by the State House and Senate, will eliminate the state's permit process in which concealed carry applicants were required to submit to state and national background checks and complete approved handgun safety and training courses. Kansas is already an open carry state and will continue to issue licenses if gun owners apply. But a new law allows adults to carry handguns openly or concealed, loaded or unloaded, without a license. License, permission to do what is otherwise illegal. If you have a right to bear, why is that a crime needing to be licensed? Should be the very first argument I would have here, unless what you're doing is a crime and it's not under the right to bear arms. It's in commerce and regulable. So Kansas is giving up requiring that. So kudos to Kansas and Kansans for pushing it forward. This should be everywhere. It should have never been a question. And again, there's an example, folks. Go get Real 45. Go to your state legislatures. You start lobbying yourself for this law. Throw that stupid servitude off. Certainly is reflective of a bill of attainder, contrary to your antecedent right to protect yourself and against your government. It's not a licensable activity because it's not actually in commerce. Government says Big Pharma kills more people than any illegal drugs combined. I didn't hear gun owners in there at all, did you? A new study has shown that pharmaceutical drugs cause more overdoses and more deaths than all the illegal drugs on the market combined, according to the government's own statistics listed in the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which I think it's the Centers for Disease Continuance. Deaths relating to pharmaceutical drugs rose roughly 23,000 last year, which accounts for over half of the total overdose deaths in the country for the time period. So these licenses go to these doctors to prescribe this to give them limited liability to kill you. How's that? Pharmaceuticals give the same license to produce. And then if you're a vaccine producer, you get immunity, complete immunity. But in this story, you'll never hear about the gun owners in America that are killing more people than anybody, than the licensed ones. And the reason why a lot of this goes on in the negative is because you've heard the word, the public awareness is all through mainstream media or the publications of the government or whatever, whoever has the most controllable voice that people will hear just as an ad over and over and over. The same nonsense will come out and get you to believe into something that you're too lazy to go find out for yourself. As I said, you don't need to know anything about vaccines if you just go read the insert. And that's up to you to decide whether you want to take on that liability. I would have nothing to say but to listen to everybody else about what's going on, to allow technology that's got questions, to allow it to go on without a product insert. It's just scientific, they call it scientific. It's just profit motive driven research that brings out the next best thing to sell. And if we want to continue to just listen to the noise and agree with it without testing it, you don't need to be a scientist to find out that if you were told about the ramifications, well, you would decide on whether or not you would want to take that on. Most of this stuff I wouldn't. And most of the stuff they're taking away our choice. This public pressure and it's all advertisement. Bernays did a great thing to come on to the ability to allow the government the tools to keep us stupid. And we're so dupable, we keep that way to the point that generally we hear crickets. And then those that act like in New York, they only do part of it. They just withdraw, and then they just sit there and say, come and take it from my cold, dead hands, and that's not how it works. They just may one day come and start doing that one at a time. You won't even know it. They won't come after your gun. They'll come after your family. They're coming after your car. They're coming after something else you're doing. They come after your employer. And in all the time, the information coming to us is that the government's protecting you, that the people that it underwrites is protecting you, that the corporations that they underwrite are protecting you. The world of chemistry. I mean, I brought into that one. I was brought up into that, the living life better through chemistry. And I told you, I'm at the time, almost a prodigal chemist. There was something about chemistry, about how chemistry works. I just knew about it. And I knew it in ways that you don't explain it in the books, but I could still come up with the right answer. So chemistry, that was a big deal for me. Wanting to get into oceanography, do the sciences there, understand that environment. That was the inner space is more unknown than even the outer space, even till today. It's pretty fascinating. Just what we don't know. And then wanting to be the scientist, to be the mindset to go look at that, to be someone to expose that to others. That's really where I started. So chemistry was a big deal. Chemistry can still be a big deal, and it can help. We've got really amazing, I guess I would look at it more like material sciences. Amazing things, but then it goes bad. And government gets involved with the bottom line. Government is the bottom line. And it all becomes one big promotion. And then we find out years later that GMOs, big tobacco moment, shocks public awake, and I hope so, when paradigm shift tyrants fall. Folks, this is what we're talking about in these tyrants, the cops being tyrants, the government being tyrants, the representative being tyrants, the bar association being tyrants. Paradigms have to shift. 2 dimes will do this, folks. And tyrants fall. If we'll just give over maybe our 2 cents and join up with 4 other people, and then that group joins up with another group of people, we'll have a paradigm's worth of sense that tyrants will fall. That's not very many people, actually. Where corporations lose their market, it is often not for some spectacular event, but a single humanizing display. Now, I'm not going to get into humanizing and what humans are, the monsters that they is. Forget that terminology. It's just the point here. Whatever our psyche wants to define ourselves, you're just a people. You're just men and women, and we hopefully we're going the right direction, and we're just surrounded by a bunch of really mean people or literal enemies. They don't like our way of life, or just stupid people. Or just people that are just so good people that are just put under the gun, just put under it, folks. Just oppressed by whatever nature, the financial oppression, the family destruction, all this stuff is all over us. We have to cut through all that. We have to stop using that as an excuse. And I've found as I focus my attention, a lot of this falls away. I don't have tolerance for a lot of things. I really don't. I don't have tolerance for us bickering against ourselves. I don't have tolerance for people that claim things that I can prove are quickly not so. As somebody asked me what I thought about an article written, and it was about the UCC. It was about using the UCC, and there was 3 jurisdictions discussed, and I started to read the article, and they start the article off on the wrong premise. I don't read it anymore. I don't even go for. I quickly looked through, but there was nothing going to solve the problem. They started on the wrong foot. They started their journey in the wrong direction. Why would I want to go continue on that? So I have little tolerance for this after I've read enough, and a lot of people may not have as much as I've read in my little knowledge base on these certain subject matters. So I don't have that toleration, and I don't have the toleration where I know we can step up and stop this, and I see us either not doing that. I see the crickets. I see us bickering against ourselves. I see just, we call it trolling sometimes. It's just in the bigger scheme of things, that's just nonsense. It's just wasteful energy. Just wasting your life away. Find something fruitful. It doesn't even have to be what I talk about. Go do what I can't do. Go be the artist I can't be. Go create something. I don't have time right now to create, though I want to. In fact, I'm not going to say it. I don't talk about my family or stuff. But anyway, looking at a family member who's doing something similar that I would have been in that direction, and he's doing it, and I have only respect for what he's doing. He probably can't do what I'm doing, and he won't do what I'm doing. But I see things I would like to be doing that I just can't anymore. And so anything short of those better aspirations, I don't have any time for, and neither should you. We're, in a war, literal, put yourself in a war. Put yourself in Donetsk. Put yourself in Gaza, and you're the one being bombed. What are you going to do? You just don't see that in the United States or the Western world. You don't see that that's exactly what's going on. Anyway, the single humanizing display. We have just witnessed such an event during the interview of a high-profile GMO advocate, Patrick Moore. This viral video has exploded into popularity, giving yet another sign, along with the recoiling public dollars, that genetically modified organisms are not wanted. Moore does a near-perfect job in less than 2 minutes to show the world the unempathetic, hypocritical face of the biotech GMO industry, stripped of all spin, lies, and deception. I'll just stop there. Well, he says, one statement, I do not believe that glyphosate in Argentina is causing increases in cancer. For whatever reason, Moore foolishly continues to boast about glyphosate. And this is that one where he told that he would drink it, and then he doesn't, right? So this is showing us that there's a lie right in our face until someone's bold enough and clever enough to get the truth before people. You're going to be persuaded by the words. You're going to be persuaded by what is being told to you. You're even going to be persuaded by things that you don't respond to because you know they're lies. Again, you can't just not respond. If it's a lie or amounts to a crime or a harm, you have to ask yourself, why aren't you stepping up to put that fire out? Now, there's maybe a legitimate thing, a reason why you don't put that fire out. But there's plenty of fires to put out, all with their different sources of fuel, and their different temperatures, and their different flame fronts, and their different propagations, and their different causations. That there's got to be a fire out there for each one of us to put out. That we see in one fell swoop that these people are there to, with a straight face, lie with you. That should galvanize you to action. Especially where it confirms everything we say. Now, I've seen some other people talk, well, you wouldn't eat a natural poison. Well, folks, yeah, you wouldn't, but this stuff hasn't been promoted that it's healthy, that it's okay for you. These natural poisons are called natural poisons. They're not said, oh, you can eat some of it. They're not promoted as being okay, or they're not promoted as being degraded by the natural environment when they're not, or not being concentrated. This is the deception of that other mind, the expert mind, trained to say that they're important, to be able to tell you what life is about, and that's the truth. When we find out over and over it's wrong. Monsanto settles 7 lawsuits after 2013 GMO wheat scare. This is not just a wheat scare. This is something that we found out existed, that they were denying existed, GMO wheat. Remember those bunch of class action suits sued when I think it was China. If I can read through this, China wouldn't allow wouldn't allow the wheat to enter their country. And so this class action lawsuit sued Monsanto for causing that. That 1 or 2 plants in Oregon shut down that whole industry. And so they sued, and Monsanto settles out. This is what it takes. The settlement agreement with wheat farmers across the United States stems from the number of lawsuits related to the 2013 discovery of genetically modified wheat on a farm, something that was an impossibility at the time, folks. Just didn't exist. On a farm in eastern Oregon, the result of temporary limits on certain exports of soft white wheat. Japan and South Korea temporarily suspended some of the wheat orders, while EU called for tougher testing from the U.S. Now, so there's money lost, and now you have standing. So there's a cause and effect. These people have a license to grow this stuff, but apparently not a license to trespass everybody's right to make money. And this is the kind of thing I'm telling you about property owners. They really need to go into the core of what property rights is, and either identify the legislatures and or the bar association, the judges therein, as co-conspirators to deprive property rights, or make people who trespass your property rights accountable. In this case, it wasn't in the property rights; it was in the commerce from the property rights stem. As we're now looking very carefully, I think, and I told you this before, that I believe that this discussion about what causes cancer and what isn't is a power grab. And I told you, watch out, these WHO, the WHO, not the OWL, not the Rot Group, the World Health Organization, the WHO. They're brokers for international bioagri-pharma, and they came out with a report that linked Roundup with cancer here a while back, and Monsanto came back out and said, hey, that's not correct. But I think this is a power play, an international power play for the WHO to keep a power authority to be able to manage all the corporate terrorists in biopharma agra. And so they brought this little report out. Well, you're going to hear it's been brought up, it's been supported, but it's not because they're trying to out Monsanto for what it does as it being a cancer cause. I think this is a political play behind the scenes for its power and authority as an international regulating body. The world's most widely used weed killer can probably, in quotes, cause cancer. The World Health Organization said on Friday, the organization's cancer arm, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, said glyphosate, the active ingredient in Monsanto's herbicide Roundup, was classified as probably carcinogenic to humans. I don't know about men and women, but the monster's humans. It's carcinogenic, probably. It also said that there was limited evidence. Well, folks, if you had a vaccine that says it could probably kill you, would you take that? We want to start really applying the precautionary principle these people like WHO, these people, the people inside WHO would impose upon you. But this is what the government gives license to commit. And we have to start saying no, and then we have to act against this. Not just saying I'm not going to buy. That's voting with my dollars. But I'm going to now assert in some way, some place, an action which puts more power behind my words and becomes the force to be reckoned with. It is also said that the limited evidence that glyphosate was carcinogenic in humans for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Monsanto's the world's largest seed company, said scientific data focused a seed company to use a genetically modified seed to sell chemicals. Let's not forget about that, which is probably tied also into pharma, because when you start getting sick, they got some other thing that can feed you with a side effect that they can then give you another drug and then put you in the health system, and then at some point somebody from Obamacare decides that you're costing them too much. Then your life completely goes down the medical tubes. Monsanto's the largest seed company, said scientific data did not support the conclusions and called on the group to hold the meeting to explain the findings. So that's where I want to leave that, because as we keep moving on, there was some other things that came out, troubling revelations. Roundup herbicide worsens antibiotic resistance already fueled by factory farming. And I thought this was interesting because while they focus us on cancer, there was other things that are in there. And scientific evidence demonstrating the harms associated with chemical-based agriculture and attendant confined animal feeding operations have stacked up fast and furious over the past several weeks and months. 4 components of our current food system causing a wide array of health and environmental problems are genetically engineered crops, pesticides, CAFOs, and the routine use of antibiotics in livestock. This includes problems like antibiotic-resistant disease, weed and pest resistance, water shortages, environmental pollution, toxic exposure through foods that threaten your health from the ingredient glyphosate and the main ingredient in Roundup. This is a list of things that you can see in a chart and things discussing this article. It shows us very clearly that we have a problem in the antibiotics that are being modified to be ineffective for some common infections. That if you listen to the prior report, if they're going after cancer, they certainly don't make mention that may be a bigger threat. Why do they remain silent on all this? Always remember, when they argue one thing, they're removing argument from all the rest that all may be happening. And then we hear this report come up here just in the last few days. Monsanto knew glyphosate cancer links 35 years ago. So here they're wanting to get answers from the WHO, not the Owl of the Rock Group, but the World Health Organization, about how they came to their findings. And there's now evidence that, according to the evidence unearthed from the archives of the EPA, in the United States, it has been established that Monsanto was fully aware of the potential of glyphosate to cause cancer in mammals since 1981. So all y'all can consider continuing these the GMOs, or not getting on a bandwagon to ban them. I don't believe in labeling. Yeah, I guess labeling's okay if it's going to be complete and all to start with. Certainly we should have maybe a both, but just ban them. And when you find them, put strict liability on everybody, any body that does it, a government agency or a corporate structure. I don't think people do this to themselves when they know that there's a harm. But Monsanto knew what the WHO was talking and referencing, and that's the whole point, and it's gotten through an intermediary environmental protection agency, which I have no regard for, and no high regard for, but there it is anyway, that the government itself knows. And will not step up. They give license for this to hurt you. I keep telling you folks, they're killing you legally. Certainly not lawful. Lawful has a moral component. But legally, they're killing you. And if they'll legally kill you, the seats of decision that made those laws and the seats of decision that interprets the same seat of decision that interprets the laws they made don't care about you. They are your enemy, and we are going to have to step up to that. Well, if we don't, I don't know what everybody's complaint is. I really don't. And I need markonthebeast@yahoo.com. Markonthebeast@yahoo.com. I need some discussion on that. I don't get anybody discussing anything with me. No, you send me some stuff and that's great. What I'm saying is that I don't apparently say enough that's controversial to have a discussion. It's either self-evident what I'm saying, and you know that, or no one wants to talk with me. Because at some point, I only have my thoughts, because I don't get any new thoughts. But how can you look out in the world and do nothing while someone is in amongst us, killing us? How can you stand by to watch that? And you don't have to be careful. I tell you, you're not going to find and solve it all. Just find something. Be what voice you can be. Be what action you can do. Build your evidence. Work at it from the kind of an idea of court and trial and the production of evidence that's irrefutable. And you don't need to go to court to apply this. You can apply this to someone who's coming against you. So I say you have your bag of law. That's your case right there, your bag of law. You're going to make the record as you talk with them. Say, I've got this authority. What's your authority? I got this authority. No, how can you counter this authority? What's your counter to this authority? Well, eventually you'll find out really quickly they have no counter to an authority. You are the authority asserting they are not. That means you're knowing and then doing to do that. You're not sitting back and letting them make the decisions. New report debunks myth that GMOs are key to feeding the world. There's a reason why they want you to feel that they're doing something magnanimous to the world, that we are making food that feeds the world. And we know it's not. Another study here. You can get the report for yourself. It's in your bag of law. If you can show enough of this, you lobby someone. And if you can't make a law and submit it and lobby your own law, go get someone who can make a law that just bans these poisons. You know, there's another thought here. If you can ban that poison, why stop? All these other poisons, all these other things, we now have reports that say that pharmaceuticals kill more people than illegal drugs. Illegal just means they're not licensed, folks. There's no distinction as the government issues a piece of paper over something that's illegal. That's the only distinction here. That you have the proof to say, hey, these are all no good. Why do we allow this license? How did it allow the killing of people and the harming of people? What right did the government have to do that? If peace and tranquility was the goal, if nothing else. We have the proof in our hands now. Put a word in our mouth and start hitting the insanity that we see in the world, and I hear crickets. It's really a fascinating time. I'm excited at one level, really, to see how bad it's gone and how much we can do to reverse it. What a real, talk about victories for us. To watch this thing get turned around in just, in the next 20 years would be pretty amazing. Monsanto employee admits an entire department exists to discredit science. So here's the people that answered the WHO that knew, this group knew, Monsanto knew they had proven that glyphosate can cause cancer. In back in 81. Yet they have a department of so-called scientists, experts say, to counter the truth. A report you can get. I won't even read it. Here's the proof, folks. If anybody wants to take this on, you need to outlaw, just ban outright, ban GMOs, and you need to ban. You need more than the banning. You need enforcement for anybody who violates it, and then you also maybe need to label where they do pop up. Why you do that is if you put a label on something that in a place that's not supposed to be forbidden, and they don't, you got them twice. Monsanto dream. Despite all this crime, and showing you really where the government's at, Monsanto dream, pro-GMO dark act comes to Congress. Now, at one level, praise Kansas, but here, Kansas Republican Mike Pompeo reintroduces anti-consumer, anti-choice, and anti-labeling pro-GMO law. How can you have such a dichotomy in one state? But there it is. And no, I don't know how many people are talking out about it. I'm not saying go out and riot in the streets over this. No, you have to get inside the system. That's how I understand now it has to be done. The battle is inside the system. The battle over genetically modified organisms or GMOs reached the U.S. Capitol on Wednesday when a news broke of the Kansas Republican Representative Pompeo will reintroduce a bill that blocks states from requiring GMO labeling. Okay, ban them, folks. I'm telling you that's the answer. Ban them. It won't matter then. You don't have to label. You don't have to have a law that won't label them. Ban them. And you have your bag of law to prove and all the reports and all the truth to do that. And someone's going to have to step up. More than one probably, but at least someone is going to have to step up. So they allow all this other poison, but the FDA turns around and maybe a good thing here. They withdraw approval of an arsenic-based drug used in poultry. Well, I find this whole thing to me is not about this story about them banning it. Why'd they allow it in the first place? Okay, first of all. But why is all of a sudden I hear arsenic now becoming a big deal in the news all of a sudden? And that was a little bit of an interesting thing to me because the arsenic happened to be one of the major points that someone who was contrary to the mining law, who tried to blame miners for the arsenic in her water, why arsenic was the only thing she pointed out. And this was years ago. This is another bugaboo, it seems to me. Arsenic is natural, folks. It's in your water. I just tell you. It's everywhere. It just seems to be everywhere. Maybe not everywhere, but you know what I'm saying. It's just part of the earth. Arsenic is it's an elemental. It's on the chart of elements. It's there. It's in the rock. That the FDA is going to withdraw approval of an arsenic-based drug, I wonder how much more politics. What else is coming up? They're withdrawing the approval for this and they're giving you something else. But I don't know how much arsenic is in this that's hurting you. I don't even know that it does hurt you. I understand there's a theory that says a little bit of harm actually toughens your body up. No, you do your own research. I don't know. But, okay, so the FDA is doing something. I want to know why they allow this in the first place. If they're going to withdraw approval. And if they're going to withdraw approval of this, based on these harms, for a turkey, why are they allowing Monsanto? Why are they allowing dye-chemical? Why are they allowing any of the other biopharma agra conditions that in their product inserts or in their reports say they kill you? Not the turkey, you. And aren't you a turkey for not rebelling against that? I don't know. I'm not going to make the judgment call. I'm just asking you to ask that. And if your decision is you're going to allow these harms against you, why do you even continue to have an opinion, really? It was something about kissing the hand, kissing the chains of the arm and the hand, whatever. What are you doing? What is your master is calling if you're not going to stand up. You can't pretend that you're doing something just because you can act like a troll over it now because now you know better. I mean, there's kind of two types of people. One, if once you know about it, then you're kind of committing the crime, aren't you? And if you're not going to commit the crime, you have to do something against it, or otherwise you agree. So they have all these. So the FDA is going to withdraw arsenic, which we know is a poison, but I don't know. We have to kind of look at what that is and how it actually goes through the body. They certainly don't care about the fact that they'll allow GMO modifications that deteriorate your gut to destroy you and change your DNA. They don't care about all that. But they're going to stop arsenic in turkeys. And I don't know, maybe it's real bad. I don't know. I'm just saying that the hypocrisy here is just too much. When in fact we look back in time, and you won't find this agreed to or even allowing you to say so. But 1,000-year-old onion and garlic eye remedy kills MRSA. We don't have the problem with the interference with antibiotics now, do we? 1,000-year-old treatment for eye infections could hold the key to killing antibiotic-resistant superbugs, experts have said. They also say could. No one's done the test. Why not do the test? Scientists recreated a 19th century Anglo-Saxon remedy using onion, garlic, and parts of cow's stomach, an eye of newt, and wing of bat. And they were astonished to find it almost completely wiped out methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, otherwise known as MRSA. Now, enough on that. We'll keep on moving because we're about out here. And something more you can do. So you can do this by taking your own but you take your own care and responsibility in your own hands. It's out there, folks. I told you, if you have a sickness, look around you. The plant's probably growing right outside your door. And if you put your mind to it, it will be soon. Seriously, I've told you about that. It's reprovable. That's a science I can prove to you if you just do it and pay attention. You can go out in the ground, and there's Mother Nature provides. A lot. Not everything. I told you I'm a survivor of antibiotics. If I wasn't for antibiotics on a very severe problem, I wouldn't be here today, so I'm not totally against that. But everything in its place, and go to the farthest extremes before you need to go to license. But one other thing you can do quickly, I've been trying to get to this. Veterans place corrupt county board under citizen's arrest. The board laughs until the sheriff shows up. I've been trying to get to this story for a long time. Entire county board arrested, citizens arrest. These people that did the arrest are veterans. More power to them. They knew something that I wish more people knew. They also know about the citizens arrest, and they know about keeping it up and keeping it real and keeping to the facts, and don't get off the point. And I'm going to have 3 links that ties you back over to them. In fact, I'm trying to get some time to maybe even contact them to look at what they did to get the sheriff to understand what they were doing was in the law, because if you look around, lots of sheriffs don't understand this citizens arrest provision. You have to know what you're doing, but where you have your local boards and counties not doing the law, and you are on the right of the law and by the law, you can get that stopped, and this story is about that. So I won't discuss more about it. Then these is people that step up. Only 2 guys are doing this, folks. 2 guys are doing this to stop the corruption in their little area. With these boards and committees that are sitting there to run you down, and they talked down an attorney who tried to say it wasn't that way, and she was not correct. As we're finding out, the attorneys are the usurpers. When you hold their feet to the fire to the exactness of even the statutes they've created, they can't do it, and that is your in. That we don't have an excuse. These 2 guys are great examples of that. If you don't know more, contact them. They've got a website. I'll give you that. They are now the voice of the corruption that you get to go through in their county. This is more things that you can do. Some of you people that are digitally oriented can make a lot of websites. You can team up with people that need that service to be able to set up the forum. I don't say necessarily a forum. I don't necessarily like comments in forums. It's too much time. But at least an information center that gives people the knowledge of the corruption and then showing what to do about it, showing that it can be dealt with. So thank you for tuning in today. So hopefully see you next week, given technicals willing and life being what it is. And again, the Doge of War, you might want to click on that when you go to the Blogcaster page, or the Dogecoin, or whatever Bitcoin, or whatever PayPal you want to do to support RLM, support UCY.TV, even WT, folks. It's a social network. Contact that. All this stuff is a little bit beyond me somehow. I don't quite understand it all, but I kind of do what I can to kind of at least keep in touch. A little bit I do, and but it's there for us. And I think all these people are putting their time and their energy. They, like Grimner, he put up front, for the servers for RLM. And so if you can help that, it would be great. It keeps my voice going. So again, thank you for tuning in. I hope some of this information was helpful. Put it in application, folks. Don't be bashful. This is us and our future, and really more of our little ones' future. Those of you that might have them. So take care. We'll see you possibly. I don't think there's a possibility. We'll be here given the opportunity to be able to. Take care. Bye bye.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.